Alright, quick audio check for anyone who's here right now. Alright, great. I think also because this isn't my usual streaming time, I'm probably going to have to wait longer for everyone to... Nice to see you here though, Peter Zionsny. Probably going to go with the regular format, so 10 minutes of questions, then I'm going to talk about content stuff for a few more minutes once everyone's here, and then we'll break down the full card. Love the Chimaev video, thanks. Sorry if I'm stumbling over my words a bit more often than usual today. I'm going to be a bit, I'm quite exhausted to say the least. How do you see Anthony Hernandez do against Imavov and Kaio? I think Imavov would probably knock him out. And I think Kaio, he's just not going to be able to really put a pace on convincingly. So I think he would really have trouble against the two of them. I think of the two, Kaio is more of a winnable matchup because he's probably not going to just get chinned against Kaio. But Imavov will probably put him out. If he can put out Izzy, he can definitely put out Hernandez. Also, I'm going to put a poll up now, once I remember how to do that, of which time is better for everyone typically. Start a poll. I think Chimaev is going to sub DDP and one with a Darce or a Nikachok. It's possible. I mean, if Chimaev is going to win, it's probably going to be a round one. I think the real problem for Chimaev is if he can't get the finish in round one, which is very possible with DDP's making adjustments to probably just stay extremely safe in round one and create a pace without leaving too many openings, then he may have a lot of problems if he cannot get the finish. DDP builds a tank card to sub him, yeah. And people do forget that on the ground, DDP is by no means lost. He had a decent Darce attempt against Whitaker. He has subbed some solid guys in the past. He knows what he's doing. He's definitely not as fluid by any means, but he is strong and he is pretty technical as well. We might leave to 15 minutes of questions because I want everyone in here before I ask a few things and run a few polls. Hey, Mr. Mike. What do you think about Malcolm Wellmaker? The biggest problem with Wellmaker is that he's by no means young. If he was 27 or 26 right now, he would have a good shot of going very far. Given the fact that he's in his 30s, I mean, he has a chance, but he can't slip up. If it's exposed that he doesn't have a perfect ground game, or that he can't, deal with the high pace, or something along those lines, he's going to have a lot of problems adjusting because he just doesn't have time to. Wellmaker versus Topuria. I would probably have to lean towards Alexandre Topuria to beat him, because he just has, even though he may not technically have the experience in terms of MMA, he has so much more experience coaching high-level fighters that I just can't imagine he wouldn't be more prepared. Bexot is fighting Topuria next? Really? Is that official? Also, is this lagging for you guys, or is the display on YouTube just being stupid for me? In the works? I mean, so many things are potentially in the works, I'm not going to take it seriously until anything is signed. Exot would low-key put a masterclass on Topuria. Yeah, that's... I mean, it's very possible, and probably even likely at this point. I would definitely lean towards Alexandre against Wellmaker, but Bexot may just be too fast. So is anyone else having the lag issue? If no one else is, I don't care, but the display in the YouTube streaming interface keeps like lagging. No? Okay. Good enough then. Bexot needs to fight more often. Yeah, he does. I think he didn't fight because he had a knee surgery or something along those lines. What do you think is Bexot's ceiling? I think he has the potential to be champion. Not saying that he necessarily will be. Alright, glad you guys aren't seeing the lagging. I don't know what YouTube is doing on this side then. But yeah, I do think that Bexot will definitely hit top 5 at some point. Whether he goes any further is hard to say right now. I'll probably generally, if the poll reflects this, I'll probably try to generally do the streams at 11 p.m. Does Van stand a chance against Pantoja? He stands a chance. I'm not going to rule out a potential win for him, but I think the reality is that he is still somewhat volume dependent, although he has done a good job at fixing that. And against someone like Pantoja, who can just run at you, throw 3 things, and then shoot, and not like really care what you throw back at him, he'll eventually get taken down and probably have issues. Like even against Ray Teixeira, who is a solid wrestler, but like not at the level of danger of Pantoja by any means. Van did well, but he still got taken down a few times, and that's just not something you can afford to do against Pantoja. Thoughts on Kaio saying Hamza potentially retires if he wins at 319? I don't believe that. I think if he wins, he will. I think that Chimaev wants to go for the double champ run at some point, so I think he does have plenty of fights left, regardless if he wins or loses. I think there's a higher chance that he retires if he loses, in all honesty. Not that I think he will, but I think it's a higher chance than if he wins. Who do you think wins Vinicius Oliveira versus Kyler Phillips? It's an interesting one, especially with what we saw of Phillips's cardio last time. I'm not entirely sure. My initial thought would be to lean Oliveira, but Oliveira can get hit early and Phillips can crack, so I'm not entirely sure unless I watch more tape. What do you think Steve Garcia's ceiling is? Honestly, watched quite a bit of tape yesterday, and I'm honestly not too impressed. I think his ceiling is much higher than his current potential. I just don't know if he'll ever reach his ceiling, because he has ridiculous attributes in the sense that he seems to hit so hard that no one wants to like as soon as someone gets touched, they just die and curl up in a ball. He's reasonably fast and has a reasonable cardio considering that. That being said, yeah, his defense in the pocket rather is absolutely non-existent. Like he's just throwing. So unless he fixes that, he's not going to go too much further most likely. But if he did get things together, I do think he could go pretty far. I just don't know if it will actually happen, would be the best way of phrasing it. Would you pick Pantoja or Merab at 135? I would have to lean Merab, in all honesty. I do think Pantoja probably has the best chance of anyone right now to beat Merab, but I would probably go like 60-40 in favor of Merab. Your voice sounds clear? That's good. I couldn't tell you why, to be honest, but glad to hear it. I think that the Kaio versus Imavov matchup is going to answer a lot of questions about like the state of middleweight right now. Because if we get an actual contender, well, then things are going to get interesting. But if they kind of like even out and we get like a weird 48-47 decision, then probably the winner of like DDP versus Chimaev is just going to steamroll them. How do you see Merab versus Umar 2 going? I genuinely think Merab would probably finish Umar in round 4 or 5. I don't think it would be a sub like with O'Malley, but I think he'd probably TKO him. Because I don't think people realize how compromised Merab was going into that fight. That was my only real concern picking Merab at the end, was that like he had staph and like 3 other infections, and his leg was like torn apart. So he gassed out a lot faster than he usually does, which is why even though he was showboating, you saw his volume drop in round 5 after he had picked it up in round 4. So I think in a second fight, he would not have that drop off, and he would probably end up finishing Umar. How do you think Aaron Pico will do in the UFC? Aaron Pico is a weird one because he, on paper, is extremely good, which is why you'll see if you look through his history of like his closing odds, he's always a massive favorite. And I get why. Like, he has power, he has decent hands, he has good wrestling, of course. I think the reality is just when he puts it together for some reason, it just does not feel smooth. So he's going to have to evolve a lot to do well in the UFC, and he has the individual tools to do so, definitely. It's just like, okay, when he takes people down, he doesn't really get proper control of them in a grappling context. He gets control of them in a wrestling context, which doesn't really work as well in MMA. On the feet, he's fine, but he doesn't really use his hands to set up the takedowns like appropriately and such, as much as you would want for a wrestler like him, at least. So I can't pick him against Evloev. I wouldn't be shocked if he beat Evloev, but I can't pick him. I do think that if he loses to Evloev, though, and then starts to get things together, he could do fairly well, end up top 10 or 5 at some point. Minus Derek and Teixeira, it looks like everybody's picks are about the same. Yeah, this is a pretty unanimous card in a way. I think the most contention is on Garcia versus Cater, and the main events, probably. Pico has no chin, though. I don't think it's that he has no chin. I think it's more so that he didn't really know, like, he wasn't used to getting hit. Like, when you have guys who come up in the amateur scene and they go through, like, the regional scene, it's like, okay, they take some shots, they get used to getting hit, they know how to treat it, and so on. He just got thrown straight into the fire, and he got hit, and he just didn't know what to do, it felt like. Marcus is a very interesting signing because he's such a high-level grappler that usually you don't see at heavyweight. Yeah, we'll see if he can get the takedowns. I haven't watched tape on him in a long time, but at least he's in somewhat in shape heavyweight who has actual skills. How would Pico versus Topuria go? Assuming you're... yeah, so if it's... which Topuria? Because Alexandre is at 135, I believe, right? And Ilya is now at 155. There's no real overlap with Pico. Ilya? Pico does not have good enough striking defense to deal with Ilya by any means. He would get finished very quickly. If you have not voted in the poll yet for which time is better, please do, because this is something I want to know. Any worries that Walter Walker is as chinny as his brother? That's not my biggest concern with Walker. My concern is more so that he's slow. Like, Johnny Walker is extremely explosive. Walter Walker feels like the complete opposite. Like, his slow, like, he seems very strong. His slow twitch is very impressive, but his fast twitch doesn't really seem there. How do you rate Chidi and Jokwani? And also Walter Walker after losing weight looked kind of solid. I'll get to that in the breakdowns. I'm higher on Walter Walker as a fighter than Chidi Njokuani as a fighter, but we'll talk about their individual matchups when we get there. Ilya versus Islam prediction. How confident are you in that pick? I am at this point pretty confident that Ilya would walk through Islam. It's just, even before, even like 2 fights ago, I was thinking that Ilya is a really bad style for Islam, and especially with the improvements that Ilya has made in the last like 2 to 3 fights, I think he would really make Islam look easy. What about heavyweight prospect Mario Pinto? I mean, he has potential. Getting dropped by Lane is not a good look. At least he's in shape again. I mean, any in-shape heavyweight will get ranked. We'll probably hit top 10 at some point, but we're going to need to see evolution from him in his next fight. All right, so I'll probably go 4 more minutes of questions because I know people are so used to my streams being later, they'll probably take a while to figure it out, and then I'm going to ask some questions about my content. Thoughts on Max versus Dustin 3? I actually don't think that this is going to be nearly as competitive as people think. I think Max is going to absolutely walk through Dustin. The reality is that I feel like people forget that Max versus Dustin 2 was on short notice and up a weight class for Max, and was still fairly close. And that was when Dustin was in his absolute prime striking-wise. Dustin has definitely left his prime striking-wise. He doesn't look as clean now. Max has improved in striking, and is still in his prime, and has actual prep this time. So I don't see it being competitive personally. The only real concern is, okay, Max got knocked out for the first time. Is his chin like cracked? Is he afraid to get hit? Something like that. So I can see a small amount of hesitation there, but I'm honestly surprised Max isn't like minus 250 here. I really want to see John Silva versus Ilya. That would be nice, yeah. Max almost finished Dustin in the second, but Dustin got saved by the bell. I know that happened in the Hooker fight. I'm not positive if that happened in the Max fight as well. I think he almost had a sub at one point. I'm forgetting what round that was, though. Max had a very underrated performance against Ilya. Yeah, he did. He did better than most people do because the footwork gap was a lot smaller than it usually is with his opponents. Max's greatest strength, other than like his natural attributes, like his chin and his cardio, is definitely his footwork. So the fact that the footwork kind of negated definitely made it hard for Ilya. Max nearly had a Darce. Yeah, sounds right. Mario Bautista versus Tom Aspinall prediction. Honestly, I have a much lower opinion of Aspinall than I think most of the MMA community does. I know that that's a meme question, but overall, I think Aspinall would lose to a lot more people than people think. If Kevin Holland beats D-Rod, do we start putting him in contender matchups against guys like Leon Buckley, etc.? I think the storyline for a Buckley rematch is there. I mean, he beat Buckley. I think that was Buckley's debut, right? So I could see Buckley wanting to get that back, and it gives Holland a shot at the rankings, and it's an actually interesting matchup. People are saying, like, oh, do the rematch between Wonderboy and Holland. I don't really like rematches once a fighter is, like, stupidly out of their prime. It just seems stupid to me. Like, this isn't like, oh, Wonderboy's like 36 and a little bit out of his prime. It's like Wonderboy's in his 40s. Outside of Islam, who do you think is the worst stylistic matchup for Ilia Topuria at lightweight? I think if John Silva went up, it would be John Silva, but that's a bit of a cop-out. So outside of that, I think that he probably honestly walks through most people, but if I really had to give an answer, maybe someone like Rufi, because Rufi has the ability to put Ilya out very quickly if he makes a mistake, and Ilya is hittable. So it needs to be someone with one punch KO power who can kind of keep up in the footwork. And maybe Rufi's there. Prime Khabib versus Ilya prediction. I'd lean Ilya. It's an interesting matchup though, because Khabib would definitely basically do what he did against Conor, where he just dives for the single leg immediately and refuses to stand up at all until he really has to. So if Ilya can break and then get to range and throw a bit, he definitely wins. If he just gets train wrestled the entire first round, yeah, he's screwed. So I'd lean Ilya, but it's hard to say. Can be hit. Heavyweight is so weak. It would take someone that has good accuracy that can crack. Yeah, I mean, I've pretty much given up on heavyweight. It's just so terrible. Ngannou versus Aspinall. I would mildly lean Aspinall because Ngannou also was very reliant on his chin. Like, even though in the, what's his name? Rosenstrike. In the Rosenstrike sequence, even though Rosenstrike didn't plant properly when he was countering, most of those counters would still at least hurt or drop most fighters. Francis just walked through them because he could. Against Aspinall, it's not going to work, and I think Aspinall is a little bit more technical, so it's in a who lands first battle, I think Aspinall would land first and put out Ngannou. John Silva beat a few unranked guys and is expected to run through Diego. I'm sure Diego will find holes just easy in current John Silva. I don't think so. Because you could say that about anyone coming up, like, oh, they've only beaten unranked guys. The real question is, what skills did they demonstrate while doing so? Because you have to anticipate their trajectory. You can't just be like, oh, because of accolades, well, then no one would ever beat a champion, because the champion always has more accolades. So I think that John Silva will walk through Diego realistically because his displayed skill has been significantly higher. His ability to make reads is very strong, and against someone who is hittable like Lopez, and is very predictable like Lopez as well. He throws the same combo most of the times. He sticks with the same strikes. I don't see Silva not finding a counter and putting him out. John Silva is a future featherweight champion. Yeah, I agree. I think that Silva could make a very impressive run here because he has incredibly good reads and the power to use them. A lot of people who are more intellectual, like say like Sandhagen, right? Sandhagen just kind of has pillow hands realistically. So if he's going to get someone out of there with a read, it's going to be a flying knee or some crazy kick because he just can't hurt people with his hands. When you have John Silva on their hand, who can see a read once against Melsik Baghdasaryan and then immediately put him out, well, okay, that's all it is. I saw on Instagram that Lopez is practicing a lot of wrestling in this fight. He's going to wrestle, and he has the BJJ to control him. I don't think that Lopez has the wrestling to get John Silva to the ground, even if he's focusing on that. Because that was my major criticism of Lopez in the past, that even though he has spectacular BJJ, he's very reliant on someone taking him down. Diego did the same, coming up against decent comp and having a good match against Mavzar, who is ranked. Diego did it in a very different manner. It was really brute force, power, speed, and so on. So even though like Diego's fight against Ortega was impressive and did make me think that he would be able to beat Volk, which I was wrong about evidently. But the way he's doing it again is just not calculated like John Silva's is. Diego's a fine fighter, but he doesn't have the footwork to trap someone and really use his natural abilities. So someone like Silva, who's going to be able to read everything, is just going to be able to punish that. Thoughts on Volk versus Yair? I believe it's not happening, so luckily, I mean, we're not subjected to that again. The funny thing is, if it did happen, Yair would have a better chance now, because Volk is older, and Yair has been training a lot of wrestling. Ultimately, I'd still lean Volk, but it would just be stupid overall. John Silva loses to Mavzar, Yair, and probably Arnold Allen also. No, I think he would pretty much, knock all three of them out pretty easily, honestly. Because Mavzar is way too hittable. He always gets caught with, I think it was the left hook. I did this analysis on him a while ago, and I don't think I ended up publishing the video. But Mavzar always gets caught by the same strikes every fight, and it's way too predictable for someone like John Silva to not punish. Yair could give John Silva a tough fight, but I think that John Silva has the footwork to really just isolate and put him out with something. Arnold Allen is underrated, but he is also clippable. Who beats Aspinall? At this point at heavyweight, it's hard to say because it's so terrible a division. Some of the up-and-comers probably have a chance. Like if Teixeira goes far, gets things together, he definitely has a chance. Diego's gym sucks at teaching footwork and cutting off the cage. Yeah, exactly. It's really bad. Who is John Silva's hardest fighter? I assume you mean who is his toughest opponent. I would actually say it was Vallejos. Even though Vallejos hasn't like quote unquote accomplished anything, I would say skill for skill Vallejos was the best. Okay, so I'm gonna end the current poll, and we're gonna talk about something related to content. So right now, I think the biggest issue with my content is I'm focusing on way too many things at once. So right now we have the Instagram content, we have the YouTube content now, then we have my betting tool, and then we have the new tool I'm working on for fighters as well. Between the four of them, I'm way too spread out, and I don't think I'm doing a great job on any of them because of that. So to try to like offload some of that work, I'm thinking of trying to pay developers to handle making the new tool for fighters, or I shouldn't say making, but polishing the rest of it so that it is marketable or whatever you want to call it. There's two different potential ways I can do this since I can't really just fund it out of pocket. I have hesitations about both of them, but I do want to know what your guys' thoughts are about both options. Option one would be to try to get venture capital funding, which is plausible. It may take a while though, and my biggest hang-up with venture capital funding is that they are always going to prioritize profit. Like they don't really care about the quality of the product or anything beyond that. It's just how can they make as much money as possible. So if I give up part of a company to venture capital, then I have to factor in the fact that that's going to be the pressure constantly. The second option would be to try to crowdfund enough of it to be able to get by paying it and doing some of it myself. I have two hesitations about that, or maybe more than two. But the first and obvious hesitation is I don't know how much I could crowdfund if I tried. I mean, the audience is not tiny. It's not massive either, though, by any means. So I really have no way of projecting how much money could be crowdfunded, even if I set up like reasonable rewards for it and such. The other hang up on that is I just don't like asking for money, if that makes any sense. I know that a lot of like entertainment driven industries are based on donations right now, but it just feels weird if you get what I mean. I do think I probably need to choose one of the two to an extent though, because for example, I want to make the tool for fighters into an app as well. I was able to make the website myself, very scrappy, but I was able to do it. However, I could not make an app myself. I just don't have the skill set for that. There's also like, okay, if I wanted to add in animations, I don't have the skill set for that either. Yes, app would be amazing. Yeah, I definitely want to make the app, and I want to add, like, I want to make it feel more professional. I don't think it's terrible right now. Those of you who have been in the alpha testing can attest to that. But I do think that a bit of polish would take it a long way and make it more marketable. So I want to know what you guys are thinking in terms of what direction I should go there and why. I'll set up a poll for it also, but I want to know explanations more so than just which way to go. After this, I promise I'll get into the what's it called? The fights, the fight breakdowns. I'm not able to speak words today, I'm sorry. What's the unit in terms of betting or something else? It's basically just a standard amount of money that you'd put on something so that you're not like discussing exact dollar amounts since that differs per person. No, it's a real well, it's not a real currency. It's not a currency, it's more of a metric. So for example, let's say that someone is betting with $100,000 total budget and someone's betting with $100 total budget. Obviously, you don't want to be based off profit because it's never going to be equal in that sense. So if so instead you'd go off units, which could be, say, for example, 1% of your budget. So if the person with $100 made a $1 profit, they'd make 1 unit. The person with $100,000 budget made 1,000, they'd make 1 unit. So therefore, you're keeping things consistent regardless of what someone's initial budget is. You make great content. I really think you have to continue what you're doing. It's reaching more and more people. You could provide breakdown we wouldn't get from Guru Bedtime. I appreciate it. And yeah, I definitely want to do that. That's part of the reason why I want to get some sort of funding to get the development stuff done, because then I can actually focus on the content more. Because right now, trying to develop 2 different apps or whatever you want to call it at the same time, along with the content, is just proving impossible. No problem, Cole. Okay, so most of you are saying crowdfunding, which realistically would have been the direction I was leaning as well, but I want to hear explanations and such from you guys. Also, I think your best bet for growing your channel would be to work with other MMA influencers / YouTubers. Yeah, I agree. I think that that growth, that will be the nice thing again, if I can get money to, again, pay developers to work on the other stuff, is I have the time to try to network, to try to make more content. I would like to get to the point where I'm making a YouTube video every week. I think you should spend your time making content for now. Well, that's the goal, yeah. How would you do crowdfunding? There's a few different ways. There's the traditional, like, oh, just do a Kickstarter. Then there's like similar websites that allow you to have like fewer restrictions, but the same concept. So it would just be through a website that has like a reward tier system, tracks it, all that type of stuff. Yeah, so in terms of collabing with MMA Shay, I'd be willing to do that. I just don't know what the best format would be for that. But I'd definitely be willing to do it. I understand not wanting to ask for money, but with the venture capital thing, prioritization of profit might dilute the quality, and quality should come first. Yeah, I agree with you, which is why I was personally leaning crowdfunding as well. I think your channel will grow consistently. Will grow if you post consistently on YouTube. Yeah, that's the goal. Stay with the content for now, build a base, and then try crowdfund later. So the issue is I don't really have a choice of what is now or later, because I'm already partway through the alpha and I am already trying to get the product out. So it's not as much about like, okay, what is now and what's later. It's just how do I approach it at the moment of having too many things I need to do and needing to maintain them, but I could theoretically pay for some of them. Maybe a collab video where you guys both talk about how you see fights going. Yeah, I mean, that's possible. Start a GoFundMe. Yeah, Kickstarter would probably be a better platform than GoFundMe, but similar concept. Part of the issue of why I need to focus on making sure my tools and applications and stuff work is because I don't exactly make much money off of content, and this has become more than a full-time thing. So I need to at least have a way of sustaining myself at this point. Or going live and doing debates or something. Yeah, I mean, I'd be down to do it. I don't know if because he's a significantly larger YouTube channel than me for now, I don't know if he'd be open to that or not, but I'm definitely willing to talk about it. Yeah, if he's open to it, I'm open to it. I'll say that much. We're going to spam him next live. Okay, fair enough. Whatever you guys want to do there. But yeah, okay. So it seems like the crowdfunding is everyone's lean. So yeah, that'll be the direction I think about then. I'll probably do more stories on Instagram asking some questions about that as well. Um, yeah, it's going to require a lot of setup, but hopefully that then gets the development of the new stuff off my back so I can focus on hopefully getting to one YouTube video a week along with the Instagram content. Absolutely love the content. Keep up the great work. Do you think that a win over Hamzat and then Imavov/Kyle would solidify DDP as the middleweight goat? It's always going to be subjective versus Silva. I think in terms of resume, it would be amazing. I think that to really, like, in everyone's eyes, surpass Silva, you might need one more defense. Don't want to move too far backwards, but what is the goal of the app? Yeah, don't worry. You can always ask questions about that. Basically, so the premise in my head is that most upcoming fighters can't afford a good full-time coach. And even if they technically have a full-time coach, they're not just paying attention to them by any means. So a lot of things get swept under the rug, and a lot of their preparation becomes complete guesswork. So what they're doing every day, their strength and conditioning, and so on, realistically, most fighters have no clue what they're doing. They just completely guess and then pray it works. So the app is basically monitoring everything you do through your inputs and such, and optimizing your schedule week by week based on your progress and helping you get to your goals. So it is somewhat AI based, somewhat other algorithms based, and so on. But essentially, it is to be a virtual coach that can pay attention to it at all times. How sure is crowdfunding to be successful, especially in today's climate where people are probably cheaper on average? That's the problem. I don't know. I really have no idea. This sounds like ChatGPT for fighters. Somewhat. So there is a feature within it that is similar to ChatGPT for fighters, but it's a much more expansive app where it is telling you what to do every day, it's tracking your progress and so on, and then it's providing like updates on how you're doing every week and much more. How much would the app be? So I don't have a completely set price yet. Basically, at the end of the alpha, I'm going to ask everyone regarding what they would expect the pricing to be, and then kind of go from there. I do have an idea in my head, but I'm not going to say anything too much about it yet, so I don't bias anyone who's in the alpha right now. Would it also be able to do some sort of VOD review? So I am working on a function for that right now, since there is that the other app that's claiming to do it, which I have other feelings about, but long story. I was thinking that at some point in their careers, Evloev and John Silva will fight. Who do you think will get the win? I'm taking John Silva there. So I think I missed some questions. He talks about you on stream. You guys are buddies. I mean, I don't talk to Shay that frequently. I mean, we have DM'd a few times, but I'm always down to talk to him. He seems like a much better content creator in this space than most MMA YouTubers, to say the least. In terms of how much the app would be, I'll give a ballpark number, since I'm assuming a lot of people would be wondering. I want the most expensive version to be under $50 a month. There'd probably be 2 tiers. First tier would definitely be cheaper. Second tier would probably be at most $50 a month. Let's put it that way. Did you see Shay's reaction to Oliveira KO? The whole thing where he put up like a troll video afterwards, or something else? You honestly give such great breakdowns. Please keep doing these. Thanks. I definitely will try to. This could be generational. Valid. Yeah, MMA Shay goes live like almost every day. You should do that. Would be great visibility. Fair enough, yeah. I definitely need to increase my stream quality probably before I do that. I have thought of a few ways of doing this. Like, obviously, I don't want to just have the end screen for my YouTube videos as like the entire thing when I'm talking with nothing else. Oh, that brings me to my second question. We'll do that as a poll, and then I'll get into the breakdowns. So before that, I'll answer the questions here. Live stream for 317? No, I didn't see that. I did not see his reaction there. Like companion streams. Yes, I do want to add that in. Do you know who Costello Van No, I don't know who that is. Okay, so question about adding more live stream content in. Because as we talked about last time, I do want to start streaming more frequently. I want to get to 3 times a week at some point. I think one big problem right now is because I do not show my face on here, there is very little interaction. I mean, there's obviously speaking and chat. I mean, in terms of like visually, there's no visual stimulus. You can pretty much watch this without looking at your screen and it doesn't make any difference. That's obviously bad for retention, bad for getting more numbers and so on. So I'm trying to think of a way around that. So to get around that, I'm thinking about trying to add in one of the, how do you describe it? Like one of the virtual model things that reflects your movements, and you can use like a webcam tracker on to basically have interaction via a digital self instead of showing your face. Facecam is never an option. Not right now. I'm not going to face reveal at least for a while. I may do it at some point. MMA VTuber. Okay, what is a VTuber? Because I have heard that term before. I'm pretty sure that's what bedtime does. Okay. It's like a virtual YouTuber. Virtual YouTuber or streamer. Is that just basically anyone who has an avatar and streams with it? Same thing you just described? Okay. Yeah, okay. Okay. So from what I've heard, there is some type of stigma around it. I don't know if it's a good or bad thing or whatever the deal is. So what are your guys' thoughts on that in general? Yes, there is. Can you elaborate? Some of them seem to be cringe, but like, what would 3 streams a week be about besides being for the card? So I would probably reserve Thursday streams for the card mainly. The other streams, I'd probably either do analysis on whatever I can get, so sparring footage from you guys, any event where they allow you to view for free without copyright issues and so on. And then maybe like a news day, talk about theoretical matchups and so on. Maybe look into stats more. Do the VTubing, but your avatar is Dana White. I don't know if the MMA community would really enjoy stuff like that. That's a valid concern. MMA community would destroy you for that. I mean, I also don't really care what the broader MMA community thinks. Honestly, as long as you guys enjoyed the direction, I couldn't care less. I just don't know if it is a good way to get additional quality or not. Because the biggest problem otherwise is without Facecam, I don't know how to get that level of interaction otherwise. The app would get you rich. That would be nice. I like this vibe already. What part of it? I'd rather nothing than VTubing. I wouldn't personally. So what is the downside of it in your guys' eyes? I like this because I'm playing a game while listening to this. That's fair. I mean, there would never be like, okay, you need to look at the screen, at least ideally. Just for people who are going to, because the reality is that it's a better way to get retention over time. That's the concern. If it's a stream, I personally don't see an issue where the screen isn't constantly on something. I'm not quite sure what you mean there. This is like a podcast? Yeah, right now it is. It feels less personal and distracting to me, I guess. That's fair, I guess. Honestly, I don't think you need any added visuals while live. I feel like most people listen while multitasking. Personally, I'm watching tape right now while listening. I somewhat agree with you, but I try to keep track of my YouTube stats to see like how I should grow and such. And my biggest problem is that of people who don't know me, who come in, the retention is really bad. And it makes sense. I mean, because there's nothing really visually to process. So if you come in and like you don't know who you're listening to, then there's no real thing to keep people around. Have you not blown up? Your content is amazing. Thanks. Hopefully soon. The avatar is funny. It would be cool. Fair. You should do that webcam idea. Okay. Maybe having cams on but drawing or something with your hand is the only idea I could possibly think of. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that. Do you think Oliveira will end up like Ferguson with a lose streak? It really depends who he fights. I don't think he's been like damaged like Ferguson was to the point he can't continue. But it really depends who he fights. You could wear a Dana White mask with one. Fair. Okay. Actually, I'll put a poll up so we could see how many people think it's a good or bad idea. Why is it autofill to good morning? And I try to type good. Like drawing up game plans or your ideas about how fights would go, showing the book, I guess. Yeah, I mean, game plans are definitely something that I'm very willing to do. Visually, I could try to make that a visual thing. I haven't done that before, but it's possible. I mean, I don't think many people with a poor attention span watch your content, considering you're not constantly yelling and screaming for no reason. That is fair. In your opinion, who is the #1 UFC GOAT of all time? Probably GSP. Just stream your MS Paint window. That is a valid thought. Sketch stupid stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's possible. I would have to figure out how to, like, represent things, but that's a thought. Have you ever been knocked out in a fight or sparring? No, I've never been knocked out personally. I did get rocked pretty badly once, but I've never been knocked out. The Weasel gets by with very, very lackluster visuals. I think part of why the Weasel gets by is because he was just so early in the space. Like, I don't think his quality is necessarily on par with certain other creators, but just because he was so early and got like the reputation of being one of the creators in the space, he was able to get I guess reputation again, for lack of a better word. For attention's sake, you could always take requests to analyze fighters and do their pros and cons. Yeah, fair. Do you have a pro record? Not officially with MMA for sure. Maybe stream some sort of slideshow and make graphics for each fight. That's possible. Making graphics is just time consuming, but it's possible. Who do you think could give John Silva a tough challenge at 145? Right now, no one, to be honest. Do you think that Pereira could have won the Ankalaev fight based on damage rounds 1 through 5? Yeah, I scored it for Alex. It was fairly close, though. I think that I had a slightly wrong impression of round 3 the first time I watched it, and I thought it was very clear for Alex. Second time I watched it, I understand why some people gave it to Ankalaev. I still think Alex edged it, but it was a very close fight. You could probably even just pull up the UFC stats website. Yeah, that's what I do for the breakdowns. So once I switch over to breakdowns for today, I'll do that. Most MMA channels do the slideshow method. Yeah, it's valid. People call me crazy. I had 135 Alex. You're not crazy by any means. It's a very viable scorecard. Round 3 is the swing round, and it was very close. All right, speaking of UFC stats, we will switch to that now, because we do have to get through this card. As lackluster a card as it is. All right, we will probably... I hate this thing. Okay, there we go. We'll probably blitz through the first 3 fights. Fatima McCline's minus 1200. There's not too much to say. Martinez does not have good grappling by any means. She was taken down and controlled by Elisa Reed. Fatima Klein's going to take her down, beat her up, probably sub her, maybe TKO her on the ground. Should be simple as that. Martinez is very entertaining on the feet. Fun karate stylist. She stays on the back foot, circles around, but it's going to open up the takedowns because she's going to be back near the fence. She's going to open up her hips for Klein to shoot whenever she throws a kick or anything. So this one should be fairly simple. This is a stupid fight. Like, I know Davis is technically coming off of a loss, but you don't, like, take someone off a loss and then give them someone who shouldn't be in the UFC, in my opinion, but whatever. So Ramirez has gotten TKO'd his last 2 fights, most recently by Thiago Moises, of all people, by a leg kick TKO, I think. Mike Davis is fairly good everywhere. He technically, I believe, started with Muay Thai, but his grappling has gotten almost better, and he seems to enjoy grappling more than striking. So he's solid everywhere. He had that wicked calf slicer on, oh god, why am I blanking on his name? Raziam, but could not quite finish that. Davis should absolutely kill him. I don't know why this fight is happening. He could, like, the only place where Ramirez has a chance is early round 1, because Ramirez starts out pretty fast, has decent grappling. Maybe there's a very, very small chance he locks up some wild sub if Davis, like, fights stupidly arrogantly, but Davis should pick him apart and finish him probably round 2, maybe round 3. Okay, first interesting fight. So I'm not even going to try to pronounce the last name. So Kennedy versus Walker. Walker made a massive transformation between his first and second UFC fight. Obviously, the physique itself was a big change, yes, but also the mentality of how he approached things when he got to the ground seemed very different. This is partially also because his coaches screamed at him when he got to the ground against Tafa, which seems to change things. But he prioritized control and then into submission a lot more than ground and pound, which seemed to be his focus against Bresky. This seemed to be a better look for him, especially at heavyweight, because just by taking someone down and laying on them, you will wear someone out at heavyweight. So that strategy, even though Walker has not needed it into the later rounds, will serve him if he can get a takedown in the early rounds and can't find a sub. Kennedy went up to heavyweight, of course, after the really bad performance against an ancient OSP. And the problem with Kennedy is he's just very calm about everything. And you could say that there are benefits to being calm in a fight, but the level of calm he is just lets him fall way too far behind sometimes. And it's just like, oh, he's waiting for something to open up. But if it doesn't open up, like, what happens? What if he gets starched quickly? Technically, Kennedy is the better fighter here. He has submissions when people shoot. He has the ability to land intercepting knees. I believe he landed the intercepting knee against Kutalaba before he locked up a sub. Let me check on that. Yeah, he got... Oh, he didn't even lock up a sub. The sub was against Clark. Yeah, okay. Yeah, he got a knee finish. So he obviously has the ability to deal with takedowns, especially because Clark and Kutalaba were very takedown heavy in that fight. So technically, on paper, I really understand the argument for people saying Kennedy should win, and I understand why he is growing as a favorite. He has good takedown defense, he's the better fighter on the feet, he has the more proven cardio, and so on. But Walker has the much better mentality in this fight, and if I'm going to pick a fight that could be somewhat close in a division as stupid as heavyweight, I'm going to pick the fighter with the better mentality. So I'm going to lean Walker getting a win here because he seemed really pissed off after he lost his first fight, while, like, Kennedy didn't seem that affected by his, like, embarrassing loss to OSP. And Walker has, again, looked to finish every single fight since early, and again, physique-wise progressed considerably as well. So I'm going to say Walker by sub. It could be wrong, though, because Kennedy is technically the better fighter. Few questions in between. Creative members only. I may do that at some point, yeah. I haven't technically monetized the channel yet, so I can't do that at the moment. Do you think Ankalaev will lose the rematch against Alex? So, the biggest problem is that the younger fighter wins the rematch like a ridiculously high percentage of the time when they win the first fight, technically. I think that Alex has the style to beat Ankalaev and the skills to do it. I think he only needs some adjustments. I don't know if it's possible at his age. So I don't know what I'm going to predict when the fight comes, because I feel like Alex should win skill-wise, but in terms of stats, historical references, all of that, Ankalaev should win this. See, the problem is I'm addicted to MMA, so I'll watch whatever slop they put together like this week. Yeah, that's valid. Kennedy is broken. He has a sad story. I'm not familiar with the story, to be honest, but fair enough. Prime Tony versus Ilya, who wins? Ilya, because Tony's defense is underrated, but he still gets hit. And when you're still getting hit, Ilya will eventually put you away. And Tony also didn't really have like the one-punch knockout power to deal with Ilya, so it would take accumulation damage, which wouldn't really work against Ilya. Another fight that I don't know why it's happening. Murphy took like 2 years off and is like 40 years old and decided to come back. Mora is a decent prospect. She got her first loss because she just gassed out against Gomes. She basically just didn't know what to do when her wrestling control didn't work. She adapted a lot into her next fight, was able to actually fight on the feet, not force takedowns, not death gas. So she should absolutely run through Murphy. I think she's going to get a finish because Murphy is just like, her specialty is taking damage, and you can't have a specialty of taking damage at like 40 years old. So I think she's going to get taken down, beaten up, and then maybe subbed or just TKO'd on the ground. If Mora doesn't make a statement here, this matchup is absolutely useless. So I really do hope that, like, for the sake of this division, she pulls something crazy off that like makes her actually get hype. John Silva versus featherweight champs like Aldo, Connor, Max, and Volk, all in their prime. So I think John Silva would beat Volk and Max. Aldo and Connor are more interesting because Aldo has the explosiveness to be a bit of a problem for John Silva, especially because John Silva can take a little bit to get into fights. Connor, of course, with the one-punch knockout power and his ability to make reads and find counters and so on is also tough. I would lean to him beating Aldo as well. Connor, I would honestly have to think about more. I'm not entirely sure. Alex being 38 is definitely not ideal. Yeah, agreed. Connor had the foresight like Silva. Yeah, exactly. All right, moving on. Someone was asking about this matchup, so here we are. So with Jake Matthews versus Chidi Njokuani. Chidi Njokuani is as close as you're going to get to a pure Muay Thai fighter. He loves the clinch, he loves using his height to land knees, he's going to land elbows and such. He wants to keep you on the outside or all the way in the clinch. He doesn't really love the boxing range. He had a problem with gassing out at middleweight. Dropping to welterweight, he hasn't shown that problem yet, but he also hasn't really had a pace put on him, so we don't know if he's actually fixed or not. He's also on the older side, so even if he has worked on his cardio, I do think he probably will gas out if he has a tough fight. Jake Matthews has been super hit or miss his pretty much entire UFC career. He's very skilled overall. It's just he doesn't seem to put it together properly. Like, some fights he's just striking, some fights he's just wrestling. He got dropped 3 times by Matthew Selmansberger, which was very surprising. He came into the UFC at a very young age. So I think that's part of the problem, is he just never got the time to properly develop and then just kept like rubber banding trying to find what would work because he didn't know. So I don't fully blame him for this. It was kind of like his manager's fault, in all honesty. But I do think overall, Jake Matthews is the more skilled fighter here. He definitely has the ability to keep a higher pace. He can go to the wrestling if he needs to. Hopefully he actually will if you're betting on him. But he has the ability. And he's just so much better in the mid-range. Like, Njokuani's probably better in the clinch, and he's probably better at kicking range. But Jake is probably just going to get into boxing range and piece him up. Because Chidi doesn't really have too much there, besides, like, trying to lunge in with elbows, I guess. So I have to lean towards Matthew winning this. Chidi's always going to have the chance to land, like, some wild knee up the middle or whatever. And he is a very technical fighter. But Jake just has more skills, he has the youth on his side and so on. I am surprised that Chidi's the favorite. I thought the odds were going to completely flip and Jake was going to be like minus 180, minus 200 by the end of this. I'm very surprised he's plus 124. I actually don't know why. Who do you think would have won in the day between Tony Ferguson and Khabib? It really depends which of their matchups materialized. Because Khabib was getting better while Tony was getting worse with age. Was like the time before that, it's hard to say. John Silva might move up after he becomes featherweight champ because he's massive for the weight class. I think he's trying to leave lightweight for Rufy, but it is possible. The Which Matthews shows up question is so real. It's like, you never know how he's going to fight. I thought he was going to wrestle a lot more last fight, just didn't at all. Made it work, but I don't know. Jake Matthews got dropped 3 times by Semmelsberger. Are we sure he beats Chidi? I'm not sure by any means. I still think he beats Chidi because the reality is like, okay, let's look at the... So we're talking about 3 years ago, he got dropped 3 times by Semmelsberger. And again, not that he's had the best opponent since, but like, he survived against Morales, right? He didn't get TKO'd there. Morales does have power. He has the ability to put people out. So even though he lost, it's Morales. He's at the top of the division now. That's fine. Phil Rowe, decent win. I mean, he made it look fairly easy. Prado, I mean, it's fine. But like, so I don't think he's the same fighter as he was when he got dropped 3 times by Semmelsberger. So I'm not going to say that that's going to be like the biggest issue. But I do get what you're saying, right? He is hittable. Chidi, on the other hand, like, again, you look at the people he's lost to, it's like, okay, Rodriguez, fine. Zarayev, and then like Mikhail is fine, yeah, but like the way he lost it just was not not inspiring any confidence, to say the least. Then a split decision with Reese McKee, and then again, like the Jared Gooden fight was horrific. I don't know if you guys remember that. Like, he just didn't want to do anything except keep the fight in the clinch. 56 clinch strikes out of 105 total strikes. He just did not want to fight at distance at all. It was really weird. So I think, especially at this point in Chidi's career, Jake Matthews is just better. Granted, again, I'm nowhere near confident. So this is not like, oh, I'm saying Jake Matthews is definitely going to win. I'm going to take Jake Matthews by decision, but you never know. All right. Another fight that I don't really know why it's happening. I mean, maybe because Chris Curtis is going down and they want to see if he actually performs well at welterweight. You never know, because welterweight is a little faster paced than middleweight. So maybe he goes down and looks terrible just because he can't land. I don't anticipate that happening, but that might be the thought here. He should just be the better boxer overall. Griffin, again, like they are both on the older side. I see the exact ages here. 85, 87, yeah. I mean, Griffin is 2 years older. They're both on the older side. Curtis is just a better boxer, and probably overall more durable at this point in his career. I don't have too much to say about it. Curtis needs to get a finish for this to be worth it. I don't know why we're doing this. Curtis could have gotten a lot more interesting matchups, but it is what it is. Unless you guys really care about this matchup, I'm just going to move on from there and take Curtis by, like, 3rd round TKO. This fight's a mismatch to me. Curtis used to fight a welterweight. This is the guy who arguably beat Allen if it wasn't for last-minute fluke injury. Yeah, like, Curtis is just much better. I'm pretty sure Curtis is 1-3 when he's had a fight at 170. Wasn't he fighting at 170 for a long time? Let me see. I'll pronounce apology. So I know UFC, his first fight was 185 and he just stayed there. But like, okay, actually don't even... Welterweight here. Light heavyweight, what the hell? Okay, no comment. Middleweight. Middleweight. Welterweight. Yeah, so he's won 2 welterweight fights here. Okay, he lost this one. Lost this one, okay, these are all welterweight, I'm assuming, yeah. So he won this one at welterweight. So he's not 1-3. He's more like 4-3. Not that that's spectacular either, but like he's not completely lost. It's easier to read on his wiki. Fair enough. I mean, I think point being is he probably makes welterweight pretty comfortably. He was a little bit like, he definitely had a little excess fat at middleweight. I think Alexandre Topuria can be champ by mid-2027 if he fights more times this year and 3 fights next year. I mean, he's going to have to do much better than he did against Picanese or whatever his name was. He's 9-2 at welterweight, pretty sure. Yeah, I mean, he'll be fine. I don't see him losing this, realistically. Who has the best blitz in the UFC? Probably DDP, actually. Oh, I never closed that poll. I forgot about that. Let me close that quickly. So, 52% of you say it's a good idea. Okay, interesting. I'll have to think more about it, I guess. That's not like very conclusive one way or the other. I do not like Whitaker's blitz. A lot of people think Whitaker has a good blitz. It's just way too predictable for me. And DDP really showed that with how he just kept countering with the southpaw jab. The problem with Alexandre Topuria, I don't know how focused he is on his career since he's one of the main coaches for Ilya. That as well. I think he's also older, right? So that's a problem. All right, we'll go on to the main card. That I don't even know how this is a main card. We have like, what is Tafa in the UFC? Like 1-3 or 2-2? Two and 3. This is our main card opener in 2025 is a 2-3 versus an 0-3. I love this. What everyone is bringing up about Tafa, which is a problem, is that his ground game is pretty much non-existent, as we saw against Walter Walker, just grabbing a heel hook pretty much as soon as he wanted to. That being said, his actual takedown defense is okay. It's not spectacular, but it's okay. If he ends up on the ground, Tukos might be able to take advantage, but Tukos also does not have spectacular control or like ground and pound or subs or anything that really worries me, which is why I do think that Tafa overall will most likely be okay. And Tukos, on the other hand, also has no striking defense or like threat or anything on the feet. He survived against Sterling, but we did see that Sterling might not really be the power puncher that people thought he is. So I am going to take Tafa. I know there is risk here in the sense that, like, okay, yeah, technically Tukos has decent takedown percentage. Tafa, if he gets taken down, might not get back up. But this is one of those situations where it's like, okay, you have a guy who's proven he can't fight in the UFC at all versus someone who, I mean, might belong, kind of. So we have to just take the person who might belong versus the guy who very clearly should be back on regional scene. So I'm going to end up taking Tafa by first round TKO. I think most of that takedown D comes from the Usman fight. Let's look specifically. 2 out of 12. Yeah, it might. I don't think Porter... Oh, Porter did get 1 takedown attempt. Okay. No, I mean, even De Lima shot 3 times, only got 1. I think that was also after the leg was compromised. I could be wrong about that, but I think it was after he blew the leg out. So that's not terrible. Like, De Lima doesn't have terrible wrestling. Yeah, I mean, here, Walker just got 2 out of 3. That's what that is. And then Sharif, 1 out of 8. Yeah, so overall, like, Tafa is stuffing the majority of the takedowns from everyone except Walker so far, which isn't the worst look in the world. Tafa is shredded, easy KO. I mean, the problem, if I want to play devil's advocate there, is the fact that heavyweights suck, and they're very slow, and it's very easy to chin them. So Tafa dealing with light heavyweight speed, as anticlimactic as Tukos might be, could be a challenge. That being said, yeah, I agree with you, and I think that Tafa is going to get an early knockout. All right. Moving on, unless anyone has any more questions there. Okay. Ilya versus Shavkat, who wins? I'll get to that after I finish the main card. I'll do main card and then do a few more questions. So, Petrino versus Lane is another question of how much worse is heavyweight than light heavyweight. I mean, Petrino's not a bad fighter. I think he just has these very weird lapses, and it's happened even earlier in his career. Like, a lot of people forget that he almost lost to Anton Turkalj, and not that Anton Turkalj is terrible. Like, he is better than people think, but he's also not someone you really want to be almost losing to if you're going to be a prospect. Petrino is heavy-handed, doesn't really move his head much, and like is not an untechnical striker. I mean, if he was very bad, he would have obviously gotten slept by Jacoby early. But he also kind of just throws. Like, he throws heavy, he knows he throws heavy, and he'll throw in combos and try to clip you. On the ground, he's more technical than he is on the feet, in my opinion. He will progress slowly, try to get to the half guard, and try to get subs from there. Sometimes he just decides to lay on people and not go for subs. It's another thing. These heavier weight class fighters are a lot less consistent than the lighter weight class fighters. Like, Petrino will go to here. Petrino will finish Bukauskas and Prachnio, then go to a decision with Tyson Pedro right afterwards. So, yeah, and of course go to the close decision with Turkalj right before that. So, and then jump into a Smith guillotine. Not a guy you really want to be putting much money on if you're betting, in my opinion. It is what it is. Lane is heavyweight Phil Hawes. Fair enough, yeah. I mean, I don't think that Lane is necessarily as skilled as Phil Hawes by any means, but I get the comparison you're going for. I actually have a different opinion of how this fight will play out than most people do. I think that Petrino is going to realize, like, oh, I just got knocked out. I don't really want to stand up. Lane has terrible takedown defense. Why don't I just take him down the entire fight and try to sub him? Because Lane can knock people out on the feet. Yeah, Petrino is probably better. Petrino probably can knock him out. But I don't think he has to, and I don't think he will try to. Because again, we're looking at 50% takedown defense here. And yeah, it's not on many takedowns by any means. But like, Lane is not someone who's going to have a technical ground game where he's going to be able to get off his back. So Petrino may as well just take him down and work from there the entire fight. Probably find an arm triangle in round 1 or 2. I don't see the fight taking long. Obviously, Petrino is a minus 750 for a reason. But at the same time, again, not the most reliable guy. Lane got brutally slept in March. Yeah, but so did Petrino, right? When was that? That was December. It was further back. Okay. I mean, I guess maybe he's recovered his confidence by now, but he knows he can wrestle. He knows he can out-wrestle Lane. I think he'll be a little more tentative about taking a shot and just be like, okay, I'm just going to shoot. And realistically, it's not a terrible strategy. Like, I think he should do that. He can probably sub Lane pretty easily. Heavyweight is just a different sport. Heavyweight is, if you don't have diabetes, you'll probably be ranked. Okay, so I have a bit of a polarizing opinion about this fight. Even though Nate Landwehr is entertaining, I feel like a lot of people don't want to admit that Nate Landwehr's whole strategy is get beaten up, don't get finished, and then just win through superior cardio in the later rounds. Like, he always gets rocked early. Like, it almost... let's see. So, against Ige, he gets dropped in round 2. He made it past round 1 without getting dropped, but, like, he still got dropped early. Against Emmers, he gets rocked early, like, pretty badly, then comes back and gets the finish. Against Onama, gets dropped early, then comes back and, like, just has better cardio, and I think 10-8s him at some point. I think it was round 2 that was a 10-8, yeah. So, I don't think that Landwehr, skill for skill, is where he would need to be to fight at this age, because he's just relying on pure durability and cardio. I don't understand who you think wins in the previous fight. Petrino by sub, I'll take, in round 1, let's say. But yeah, so to continue on my Nate Landwehr rant, He's very entertaining. He's always going to have a fun fight, but he's just not skilled enough to be fighting the way he does at his age, because he is going to take damage, and he's not going to be able to take it for much longer. So the hang up with Morgan Charrier is he tends to underperform. Like, he was a pretty sizable favorite against Wood, I believe, and he was a favorite against Shepe also. And to be fair, I do think the Shepe fight he could have arguably won. But even though Morgan can be a little low volume, can be a little bit unreliable, can get taken down by Gabriel Miranda and give everyone a stressful moment who bet on him, because when Miranda has your back, he definitely can sub you. Morgan's just the more technical fighter here by a long shot. Also, something to note is that you can kind of tough your way through getting hit in the head a little bit. If you have a decent chin, if you have a solid cardio, and you have the will to keep going, you can kind of keep going even when you're rocked. When your body gives out, your body just gives out. And Morgan's probably going to be blasting the body kicks, and I think that's going to take a pretty big toll on Landwehr here. So I do think we're going to end up with, like, okay, Landwehr might do decent early, like the first half of round one, let's say. Then I think Morgan's going to start finding, like, his teep kicks, his round kicks to the liver and all that, and then he'll probably get a late round one or early round two finish. Almost finished Nate the Train as a mythical fighter. He's old and I'm coping. Yeah, that's fair. It's entertaining. It's just Morgan, despite being very inconsistent, is just better everywhere. Maybe Nate has slightly better cardio. Maybe. But especially at this age where he's not going to be able to just tank shots to get there, I don't think it's going to happen. Shepe is arguably a better Nate, so Sherry has already solved that puzzle. Yeah, exactly. So I don't have too much to say about the fight stylistically, other than, like, Sherry is just better everywhere, and I'm honestly surprised he's not, like, minus 400. I think it's just because he is a chronic underperformer. Like, he was supposed to deal with Miranda a lot more easily than he did. And he still got the finish in round two, but getting taken down and having your back taken was not the best look. He was supposed to beat Shepe a lot more convincingly than that fight played out, and he was supposed to beat Wood. So I think when you have instances like that, people get shied away from betting on you just because you're seen as unreliable even when you should very clearly win. So I'd honestly say Sherry is probably more reliable than Petrino. Even though Petrino, there should be a bigger skill gap, you just don't know what Petrino's going to do when, like, if he's going to jump into a guillotine or something. Not that Austin Lane can pull a guillotine, but you get the point. So Charrier should be fine. Yeah, I think Morgan's problem is he always tends to play his opponent's game, boxing with Wood, initiating, wrestling as Shepe, etc. That's a fair point. I just don't think in this fight it will matter, because he can play any game that Nate can better. How would Ilya versus Usman Nurmagomedov go? Ilya would kill him in, like, literally under 30 seconds. That being said, he should win. Yeah, exactly. Usman Nurmagomedov is not nearly as good as people think. Kattar versus Steve Garcia is a very interesting fight, because Steve Garcia fights like a maniac who wants to take your head off, and Kattar, especially in his prime, was a good boxer and decent counterpuncher. Garcia in the pocket is very questionable. I will say that. Like, getting chinned by I'm blanking on his name, but it's not a well-aged win. Or loss, I should say. Yeah, Mahashate, or however you say it. Getting chinned by him was a really bad look. And then, if you look at this, he also got dropped by Shyla Nerdenbecke and so on. He's cleaned up his blitzes and approaches a little bit. Oh, if I remember correctly, he also got rocked by Sungwoo Choi. So, like, even though these wins look very dominant on paper, they're a lot less dominant than they appear. Now, that being said, he is improving, he has crazy power, and if he hits Kattar probably is going to die despite Kattar having a much better chin. What makes it interesting again is if we ignore the loss streak, like, Kattar's counterboxing at this time was just ridiculous. Like, Kattar is the better boxer here. In terms of physical attributes, ability to get a knockout and such, he isn't quite there. His speed is definitely diminished. His footwork definitely has diminished since his knee injury against Allen. So he has probably aged out enough that Steve Garcia should win here. However, in his prime, I'm definitely taking Kattar in this fight. So it's a very weird thing because, like, okay, betting on degradation of skill set while logical is always a bit strange to do. But yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm going to say Steve Garcia should win. He's probably going to mix things up. He'll shoot a takedown just to get Kattar thinking, then he'll blitz, then yeah, I don't know. He's probably just going to put a pace until he could find that shot. My brain is not working for complex analysis right now, but ultimately I'm taking Garcia by TKO, probably late round 1. UFC just pulling off all the Yonks on this card, yeah. Killing off, I should say, yeah. Seems like the goal. People glaze Usman Nurmagomedov and Paul Hughes for their fight, but people forget Paul Hughes went to a majority decision with Charrier and is 1-1 with Vucenic. Yeah, I mean, I do think that Paul Hughes has improved a fair amount. I do like Paul Hughes. I think he has a pretty high ceiling. But yeah, he's not really like high UFC level by any means. Not yet, at least. Who do you think is the best welterweight right now? I do think JDM is the best welterweight right now. I apologize if this is anyone's first stream. I'm usually a lot more coherent than this. We need a fight IQ stat on tail of the tape. Yeah, that would be really nice. Even just an IQ stat would be great. Just make all fighters take an IQ test and put it on there. He reminds me of Patchy Mix a little bit, but I haven't seen Hughes fight in a minute. He's a lot more aggressive now. This is my first stream and it's fine. Glad to hear that. Alright, we'll go on to Stephen Thompson. So everyone knows how Stephen Thompson fights in general. Karate stylist, I have a lot of bias towards him since I started as a karate stylist as well. He's going to stay on the outside, look for counter shots, blitz in. He blitzes off angles, unlike MVP. So when people think of the blitz now, they think of how MVP blitzes, but Wonderboy will always try to find an angle as he blitzes, so it's a lot less like predictable than MVP jumping in. He has much better kicks than someone like, say, MVP, and was able to, of course, light up Hollins with them later in the fight. Very diverse skill set. Not the best takedown defense in recent times. People like to argue like, oh, he never had good takedown defense. That's just not true. He defended a lot of takedowns very well in his early day. I think his reaction time just got a little bit worse as he aged, and that change in reaction time just made people be able to get to his hips more easily and resulted in them getting him down. The Buckley fight, even though he was doing well on the feet, in my opinion, was not the best look because of the fact that he was having trouble with the wrestling. And not that he was having trouble and that he was getting held down. He was just getting taken down too easily. And against someone like Bonfim, who, if he takes you down, the fight might be over, I just don't think that's going to go well. Wonderboy might stuff 1 takedown, 2 takedowns, but Wonderboy doesn't really have the power to put Bonfim out, and he doesn't have the pace to break him like someone like Dalby. So the reality is, Bonfim's going to have the time that he needs to find the takedown, and then eventually get the submission. I really like Wonderboy. I will be rooting for him, realistically. I think Bonfim probably subs him in 1 or 2. By the way, Patchy makes the best fraud check of all time. I'm so glad I called that one. It made my old videos age very well. Best welterweight is JDM right now. Buckley in a 1.5 years. Buckley has a lot of work to do. He has the natural attributes. I won't say he can't do it, but he has a lot of work. I don't know why they're not just giving Wonderboy a striking matchup to end his career. He has a max of 2 fights left. They could have just given him someone who's going to strike with him. Even if they were probably going to knock him out, at least it would be a fight that he has like a solid chance in and would have fun in, and the fans would have fun. Bonfim's just going to blitz, go for a takedown. If it doesn't work, pull a guillotine, and then if that doesn't work, stand up and shoot again, and then like eventually find a sub. It's just a terrible matchup for Wonderboy. Should change his name to Wonder Man at this point. Fair. I think Morales would be a problem in the near future. That's fair. Wonder Hunk, fair. Someone asked Shavkat versus Ilya. Shavkat just doesn't have the defense to deal with Ilya, in my opinion. I don't think Shavkat is really up there right now, honestly. Oops. Why did it scroll down? This website is so janky. Okay. Derek Lewis versus Teixeira Teixeira. Everyone knows how Lewis fights for the most part. Kind of just doesn't do much until he explodes, and then when he explodes, sometimes he finds a shot and puts someone out. Otherwise, he just tends to lose. But he can find the shot at any point. He is dangerous the entire fight. Even in a round 5, he will have knockout power. He's just that type of fighter because he doesn't fight at an incredibly high pace or rely on like too much setup. He doesn't really do his work with the straight shots. Again, he will need to find an overhand or an uppercut or something wild like that. He will throw the switch kicks, flying knees. It's funny because Lewis is probably a lot more athletic than we give him credit for, but like because most of his movements seem so labored most of the time, it's hard to see him that way. But yeah, that's who Derek Lewis is. Teixeira Teixeira is a tough one to break down because who he could be and who he is right now may be very different things. It's very hard to say if he is who people think he is, if that makes any sense. Because Teixeira, last fight, looked incredible, in the sense that I made the Instagram reel about his fight IQ, which, as long as that wasn't a complete accident, which I don't think it was, it looked very purposeful. The fact that he used the knee to trap him, to trap Tafa from spinning out, and to free his arm simultaneously, then use the other knee to actually free his arm, and then get the elbow finish, knowing that Tafa had his guard down, looked extremely calculated. And that level of fight IQ is not something that you see at heavyweight. So, as long as none of that was a coincidence, then I think just on account of the fight IQ, Teixeira will go very far. The counterpoint to this that a lot of people like to make is that his Contender Series fight was not good. He looked like he didn't know what to do when someone got close. In the pocket, he was kind of just like swinging and moving weirdly. It may have been nerves. I think there's a solid chance it was nerves because of the fact that he performed so well afterwards. But it was a bad look because he was getting cracked by someone who he should not have been getting cracked by. And his defense looked anticlimactic, to say the absolute least. Teixeira likes to catch you with the 1-2 on the outside. He will throw a lot of jabs. He will throw a lot of low calf kicks. He has the height and length to do it. In the clinch rather, he knows what he's doing, as we saw last fight. So technically speaking, Teixeira is like the much better fighter. It's just a question of, will his defense hold up against Lewis only needing one shot, seeing as we've seen Teixeira get cracked before? I am going to lean, again, towards Teixeira getting a first-round knockout, because Teixeira should win. Teixeira is the better fighter, Teixeira is much younger, Teixeira is longer, Teixeira has pretty much every advantage that there is. This is also heavyweight, and you never know what's going to happen, and it is Derek Lewis who has a habit of, like, chinning people that he's supposed to lose to. So, not the most technical breakdown in this sense, but if I have to make a prediction again, I'm going to say Teixeira finds a head kick in round 1 and ends it, potentially in the first minute. This fight has the ability for Teixeira to look absolutely spectacular and get like a relatively high-ranked fight. You never know, though. This is a perfect setup for a fraud check. Line is way too wide, in my opinion. It's possible. I do think that Teixeira should win it, especially seeing as he did last time. Sorry. Especially seeing how he performed last fight with the fight IQ adjustments and such. But yeah, I mean, you could be right. It's just, if Teixeira actually loses to a 40-year-old Derek Lewis, just cut the heavyweight division at this point. How would Kavanaugh versus Van go? Van is a lot neater in his boxing, and even though Kavanaugh is very fast and powerful, Van would counter and put him out. Can we get a recap of your picks real quick? Yeah, so we'll go from the beginning for anyone who's missed this. So, gonna take Klein versus submission. I'll probably say round 2. I don't know what I'm going to say on my actual picks reel, but for now I'm going to say round 2. I'm going to say Davis by round 2 submission, Walker by round 1 submission, Mora by round 2 TKO on the ground and pounds, Jake Matthews decision, Chris Curtis, I'm going to say round 3 TKO, could very easily be a decision. I'm going to say Tafa round 1 TKO, Petrino round 1 sub, Charrier round 2 TKO, Garcia late round 1 TKO, Bonfim round 1 sub, and we're going to say Teixeira round 1 TKO. I'm picking Teixeira because he's not a blob. Yeah, that's fair. I can see Derek Lewis getting knocked out by an elbow again. Fair. Or you could see him. Yeah, fair. It is possible. I think that Teixeira should use his length in this matchup because Lewis does like to reach a lot when he goes in. Teixeira could even find a knee up the middle as Lewis is entering. If Teixeira has the flexibility to do that, I'm not entirely sure. Josh Van versus Pantoja. I'm leaning Pantoja. I just don't think Josh Van is ready. I think Van will be champion at some point. I just don't think he's ready right now. What about JDM versus Ilya? It's a very good question. I am very slightly leaning towards Ilya right now. But JDM's combination boxing is much better. So I would not be surprised if he was able to find something against Ilya, especially seeing that Ilya does get hit a lot more than people seem to realize. I think that the way Ilya approaches that fight is he shoots early. He may or may not get the takedown, but I think that he wants to really force JDM to do that thing where he's fighting with one hand down, and once he does that, it's going to be a lot easier for Ilya to find the shot to put him out. What if Ilya bulks up to middleweight, light heavyweight, or heavyweight? Honestly, if Ilya bulks up to heavyweight, he probably chins Tom Aspinall, and I'm not even being sarcastic there. I think rushing Van to a title fight will be a detriment to his career later. Yeah, I do, because if he loses to Pantoja, which I do think he will, it's always going to be a stain on his record, and it's always going to be something that people criticize in terms of his resume when he's retiring. Whereas, take a few more fights, relax, and you'll get there eventually, and if he took 3 more fights, then he would be at the point okay, maybe you can beat him. Islam might head kick JDM from the hand thing. Yeah, it's possible. That's JDM's biggest problem, is that if he thinks you're going to wrestle and he drops his hands, well, you're a lot more vulnerable to everything that's coming up to your head. Did he reach Aspinall's chin? Crumple him with a body shot first, then knock him out. But it's experience in a high-level fight. Yeah, I'm not saying that it's going to be, I don't think it's going to derail his career, let's put it that way. I think Van will be fine, even if he loses. But I think that there's just no reason to force it. Do you think Topuria will lose at some point? Honestly, with the likely matchups he's going to get, no. I think that if he had to fight a John Silva or something, yeah, there's a solid chance. But I honestly don't think that that the people he's going to fight have a chance of beating him. Evloev versus Pico prediction. Evloev decision. Breakdown Ilya versus John. So the massive advantage that Ilya has there is his footwork. John Silva's footwork isn't bad, but it isn't spectacular. Ilya's way of trapping people is very spectacular. That's why he's able to land the hook in the overhands, because he's able to corral you against the fence and make you walk into it. Silva, again, is going to be reliant on his reads and probably try to clip Ilya as he's coming in. I could see John going for something like the spinning elbow, because I think he'd want to try to dip the overhand and counter with it as Ilya's coming in, because Ilya tends to, again, bring his entire body weight with it. So, because Ilya is so predictable in what he throws, I have to lean John. But Ilya does have a sizable footwork advantage, and if John gets backed up, that's going to be trouble for him. Ben is a bit too active. Yeah, I get what you mean. Thoughts on Teixeira by submission. He's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belt, 3 times BJJ national champion, 2 times Brazilian. Yeah. I did think about that. I did see that submission on his record. I just don't think it's likely because Lewis, even though he's not like a jiu-jitsu savant by any means, he's very competent at not getting subbed. He's been in very compromising positions, even against people like Gelton Almeida, and just did a very good job at staying safe and working in a neutral position. Obviously, Cormier was able to sub him. I mean, Cormier, light heavyweight skill, transferred up and so on. But I don't think that it's a likely outcome by any means. I'm not going to say it's impossible. I just think the TKO is a lot more likely. No such thing as too active. The best base for MMA is activity. I think it really depends, actually. I think activity can be a problem, especially if your body's getting too taxed by the weight cuts. I think that maybe the reason why Van doesn't have too much of a problem is because he is on the smaller side, even for flyweight. So maybe he really just doesn't cut much weight, and because of that, his body's not too taxed. But for guys who are cutting a decent amount of weight, I don't think you should fight more frequently than like once every 2.5 months, because you have to give time for your body to reset before you start working towards the next cut. Early prediction for Ortega versus Aljo. I think Aljo can just put volume on him and win. I don't think it's going to be like fun, but like Aljo should just be able to like throw strikes, then shoot, and like basically what he did to Cater. Just put it that way. Who wins between Yoel and Imavov? Prime for Prime? That's a tough one. Yoel was really fast. I'm going to lean Imavov. He's just a little bit cleaner while having a little bit more speed as well. But I would not be confident. Being too active can cause wear and tear. Van just had a war if he fights Pantoja. He would have fought 4 times this year. Yeah. The wear and tear can be a problem. Van probably could make 115. Yeah. That may be because why he's able to fight so frequently. Is because, again, he just doesn't cut much. Moreno versus Royval 3 prediction. They verbally agreed. So I've been thinking about that one. I genuinely think it should open as even money. I think that either of them could win that fight. I think it also matters if it's 3 or 5 rounds. If it is 3 rounds, I'm going to lean towards Moreno. If it's 5 rounds, I'm going to lean towards Royval, because Royval really needs that cardio advantage. Like, he needs to take you into those later rounds and try to win that round 5 to get like the 48-47 decision rather. Moreno's going to be able to counter him early. Royval just does not fix his problem with his defense where he comes in without defending himself. Like, that's why I was able to pick Van with like relative confidence, because as you guys saw in that reel, I knew that like Royval would just come in, not defend himself, and get cracked every time. So I'm going to say if it's 3 rounds, Moreno. If it's 5 rounds, I'm going to lean Royval. Moreno would do a lot better if he could get his whole like killer spirit back, or whatever you want to call it. But I just don't think it really exists anymore, to be honest. I think he's just taken way too much damage to really get into that mentality. How does Ilya versus Arman go? I think Ilya finds an early finish. Arman gets hit too much. He just munches overhands like Snickers bars. Fair enough. Both in their prime, Jan versus Holloway, who wins? I mean, are we assuming at 145? I'd probably take Holloway. I don't think Jan would be able to get his reads too easily, because it would kind of be like the Corey fight, except Holloway has a bit more danger in his hands. Holloway's obviously not a power puncher, but Corey like seemingly just can't hurt people with his hands at the high levels. Holloway can, at least. Prime Elda versus Ilya at 145. Ilya would take that pretty easily, in my opinion. MVP versus Cannonier. So, I don't know why MVP is the betting favorite, not gonna lie. I think that Cannonier can just kick his legs, take him down, do whatever he needs to do. it may not be like the prettiest, but he should be able to TKO MVP in my opinion, because MVP has never been great against like what Cannonier is good at. Paul Hughes versus Usman 2 may happen in September. Who wins? I'm gonna lean towards Paul Hughes because he just has a better mentality, and like I may predict off mentality a bit too frequently, but I think that when you have a fight that is very close for skill, the fighter who has the better mentality will win the rematch. Or just the fight in general, if they've never fought before, I should say. Van Holland, Buckley, Charles, Johnson all fight about 4 times a year with massive success. If the weight cut and damage isn't an issue, no reason not to fight every few months. Keeps you sharp. Especially early on in your career, you could do that. But again, Van, as we established, is on the smaller side. Holland doesn't really cut much weight either. Buckley, at 170, cuts more weight. So I have a feeling we're going to be seeing him fight less frequently at 170. Charles Johnson, I mean, I think he had a lot of like lower level opponents, to be honest, for a while. Like the only fight on his record that really aged well was Van. Let's see. Okay, the Azat Muxim fight looks good in hindsight because Muxim just looked good, but Muxim had not looked good until his fight against Tagir. So he just got much better, like out of absolutely nowhere. But I wouldn't say like this was a good win at the time. Hadley, of course, got cut from the UFC, which isn't a spectacular win. Okay, yeah, obviously Van is a good win. But then like Sumadarji in a close decision that a lot of people think he lost. Like, really? I don't know. Like you don't want to be losing to Sumadarji right now. He had 3 losses in a row before that. And then losing to Temirov in a fight that like Johnson really could have won. I don't know. I mean, I know he fights a lot, but I don't think against opponents that are reasonable it goes well. How do you rate Michael Morales? Do you think he can ever be a real contender? I think that people are overrating him a little bit right now after his performance against Burns. I do think he is solid, but he needs more improvements. I think he's a solid top 5, and he can be a contender, but I don't think right now he would beat JDM or anything. As a Jan fan, I don't see him doing great at 145. Yeah, great. Especially with the high guard counterpunching style that like kind of relies on his opponent not having too much more range than him or being able to like take their shots. It's just not a great transition. Who has the best shot to beat Merab at 135? It would be Pantoja if he went up. Prime John versus Prime Kane, who wins? Jones. Realistically. His breakdowns are always so good, thanks. Why does Hughes and Usman not do well in the UFC? I just don't think they have the skill level. Just simple as that, to be honest. Temirov just popped too. Didn't he pop for like an antibiotic or something though? It's something weird. Like it was one of those things where I kind of believe that it could have been a an actual like misunderstanding. RDR versus Whitaker. I think Whitaker should take it. Like RDR beat Nickel, who was just exposed to have absolutely nothing. But that was just Nickel being terrible, not RDR being good in my opinion. Like RDR still gets hit way too frequently on the feet and still doesn't have good enough wrestling to take on someone like Whitaker. I'm very interested in Jose Ochoa versus Asu Amabayev. Yeah, so am I. That should be fun. I like Tollison well enough, but I don't see anyone heavyweight coming close to Tom, and Tom isn't even that generational compared to like Ilya. Yeah, heavyweight sucks. I mean, nothing more we could say about that. And do you still think right now Jones would beat Aspinall? I mean, skill for skill, if I analyze it, yes, I believe Jones would beat Aspinall. But when Jones himself doesn't seem to think that, very hard for me to continue thinking that. So, big caveat there. How do you see Aspinall versus Gon? Aspinall just takes him down, subs him. I mean, Gon also doesn't have much power in his hands, so he doesn't like have the threat of chinning Aspinall when Aspinall makes one of his like mistakes. RDR literally went life and death with GM3. He's not beating Whitaker. Yeah, exactly. Like, Whitaker is one of those bets I'm going to go pretty heavy on when that fight comes up. I don't even think Usman is the best lightweight outside the PFL. Yeah, probably. Oh, sorry, outside the UFC. Yeah, probably not. You know who I really want to see in the UFC, even though I don't think he's championship level or anything, right now at least, but I want to see Christian Lee in UFC, for those of you who know him. People are betting on RDR right now too. It's great. Yeah, that's fair. What about Keita? Not familiar. Which org is that in? Octagon? Okay, I don't really follow Octagon that much, so. Octagon has some very good fighters, though, so I would believe you if you said that he's UFC quality, for sure. Do you think Bo Nickel will ever be as good as he was hyped up to be? No, because he kind of just sucks at everything. Like, if it was an issue of like, oh, he had a few holes he needed to fix that he hadn't transitioning from another sport, like, okay, fair enough, that will always happen. But Nickel has nothing. Dude, Christian Lee is really good. His knee finish is of Oka's amazing. Good call. Yeah, thanks. He's extremely explosive like Buxod, but more. Fair enough. Early prediction, Dolidze versus Hernandez. It's a tough one to call. I'm actually going to lean Dolidze, just because he hits hard enough to crack Hernandez. I don't think Hernandez will be able to do anything on the ground against him. He's a double champ over there, and his only loss comes from getting hurt a minute into the fight. I'd love to see him come over then. Ceiling for Almacan high. I think he could be. I think he will fight for the title at some point in his career. I don't know if he'll be champion, but I think he will fight for the title. A quick promo for anyone who is still here. So, for most of you know that I do have a betting tool that I do promote once in a while on the streams, which I probably should do more frequently. I'm not good at doing this. But one of the users actually built a tool that tracks the picks every week. So let me grab that so I can show you guys. Okay, here we go. So, as you guys can see, for 2025 so far, even just with the default strategy right now, it's up 126 units. So, the tool is very good. It is in the description if you want to sign up. This is also just one of the tools in it. There are other tools. There is also the communal Discord that you get access to when you sign up, where we discuss all the bets. And a lot of people who use the picks in parlays and such are doing even better than the graph indicates. So if you want help with betting, if you are betting most weeks, I recommend you join because we make a fair amount of money there. And shout out to Zeros if you're watching. Thank you for making this. I mainly code in Python. I did not make this though. Zeros made this for me. Islam versus JDM predictions. I am mildly leaning JDM. I think that the biggest problem for him is if he drops his hand, he could get caught with something. On the feet, he is just much better though, and Islam doesn't have good takedowns out in the open. So I don't think Islam is going to get a takedown early. I do think he's going to have to establish something with his hands to get a takedown, or vice versa. But yeah, so because of that, I'm going to lean towards JDM landing something like late round 1, maybe early round 2, and getting the finish there. Because Islam can't take the damage that Bilal did. But this all being said again, the reason why I was so confident in JDM beating Bilal wasn't because JDM is like the best welterweight of all time or anything. It was because I think JDM is good, and I know that Bilal sucks. The fact that Bilal was ever a champion is absolutely wild to me. He's terrible at everything. So I was very confident in JDM because I was very confident that Bilal is not good. JDM, however, is progressing and looked very good in that fight and progressed in ways I didn't even expect him to. So, respect to him, of course, and I do think that he has a good shot at beating Islam. Prime GSP versus Ilya. Right now, I would lean GSP. But if we see Ilya can deal with wrestling really well against like Arman or Islam or something, I definitely may change my mind. What do you think about Malcolm Wellmaker? The biggest problem is that he's not young. Again, if he was like 27 right now, it would be great. But seeing that he's in his 30s, like, I think he'll break into the rankings maybe, but barely. And I think at some point we'll probably find out he has some extreme weakness somewhere. I think his defense is very questionable. Even in his last fight, he was like turning away and weird stuff at certain points. So I don't think he's going to go much further than maybe cracking top 15, if I'm being honest. I think JDM is going to be champ for a long time. That is very possible, yeah. There goes the chance that we're having an interview with Paul. I'm very fine with that. Also, in my opinion, Shavkat isn't fighting again anytime soon. That dude's career is over and it's going to be called the next big what if of MMA. Yeah, Shavkat is like, oh, I'm only fighting for a title next. Like, dude has sat out for how long and barely got past the short notice Gary. Like, at this point, if Gary gets another win, Gary definitely deserves a shot more than Shavkat, in my opinion. I feel like JDM had too much of a striking battle with Bilal. Got seriously outstruck at points. I can see Islam keeping up with the feet and finding a Dars and a scrabble in round 4. So I think, again, what people kind of forget about that fight is that Bilal is freakishly durable. Even though Bilal isn't the most skilled, he just can eat a stupid amount of damage. So I think the problem that JDM was having was he was like, okay, I'm lighting this guy up and nothing is happening. Against someone like Islam, that's not going to happen. Like, Islam can't take those shots. Malcolm Wellmaker will lose a 2-1 division to Rob Font and go back to top 15. Yeah, very possible. Do you think he would win the fight with Topuria? It's very hard to say because we haven't seen much of Topuria. I would lean Topuria, though. Do you think McGee can beat Jan? As a Jan fan, I'm nervous. If it was 5 rounds, I would say Jan definitely wins. I still think Jan wins, but I think it's going to be like a 29-28 decision that may be slightly lackluster. Maybe Jan has like, it's like a close round 2, and then Jan like really takes over in round 3 and like gets close to a 10-8, but doesn't quite get there. I do think Jan is very likely to win, but like there's a small chance McGee can take round 1 and 2. Walker versus Zhang. You know the answer to that. Walker's about to get knocked out very badly. Shavkat is dumb. Shavkat versus Sean Brady for number 1 contender would be the fight to make. I honestly think Shavkat versus Bilal was the fight to make. It's like, it was supposed to happen already. It would actually be a kind of fun matchup. So, and like, there's not many times you can say that with Bilal, so like, just do it. I think JDM knocks out Ilya. Thoughts? It's possible. I think it is also a very close fight. I think that if Ilya game plans properly, he can win it, but he may also get lit up because of the fact that JDM has better boxing combos. Shavkat is made out of glass, fair. Giving McGee any chance against Jan when McGee was recently extremely close to being finished by leg kicks and only didn't because his opponent had one of the historically bad fight IQ moments. Yeah, that was definitely bad. Do you think Pico can out-wrestle Evloev? I think he can neutralize the wrestling, but I don't think he will out-wrestle Evloev because of the fact that even if like Pico technically gets Evloev down briefly, Evloev will be able to recover because Pico doesn't have like grappling, like jiu-jitsu style control. He has wrestling style control, which is a lot easier to break in MMA. I agree, but Bilal versus Usman has to happen now. That's fair. That is fair. You think Zhang will lose to Walker? No. No, no. Walker is about to get knocked out, I said. Has anyone seen how insanely juicy Pico has looked? Yeah, I did. It was strange. JDM versus Hamzat, who wins at 170. I'd go with JDM. I think he can survive long enough for Hamzat to gas out. It would be probably close, but I assume, especially working with like Craig Jones, they would just have a round one emergency game plan of like, okay, how do I just survive and make sure we get to the points where we can start lighting him up? Yeah, that Pico picture was strange. I don't know what's happening there. Khabib versus JDM at 170, who wins? I'd lean Khabib there just because I think the chain wrestling style would be a lot harder for JDM to handle. Strong future champ? It's very possible. JDM's style of tight pocket boxing with excellent defensive grappling is literally just Gilbert Burns 2.0. Yeah, pretty much. I would say more than 2.0 to be honest, though. Whitaker versus DeRitter predictions. Whitaker TKO. Do you have any hot take picks on any upcoming cards? Let's see. Let's see what is coming up. Honestly, there's nothing too interesting here. We really have Ryan Spann versus Bresky. I didn't even know this was a matchup. What the hell? I mean, maybe my hottest take is that Costa has a good chance of beating Kopylov for this card. Especially seeing how much like Kopylov struggled with Chris Curtis. I think that if we see like old Costa come in, he'll probably knock out Kopylov. I probably have the relatively generic predictions for this. The only like massive underdog I'll probably be taking is Ochoa when he comes in for here, because I just have a very high opinion of him. Sorry, not Ochoa. You guys know who I'm talking about. Why am I blanking on the name? Now I have to find this. You guys remind me of the name, or should I look back at the card? Are you going to stream Max versus Dustin? Kind of a pointless card, but fun discussion. I might. I'm definitely thinking about it. I'll take JDM will be the greatest welterweight of all time. It's possible. Winner of Imavov versus Beralho. I'm slightly leading Imavov, but I think it's close. How do you think the winner for us fares against DDP versus Chimaev? Imavov has a good chance against either of them, in my opinion. Beralho, not as much. He would have a better chance against Chimaev, in my opinion. Gon is objectively not working on his grappling. His coaches have literally complained about his reluctance to grapple, and he spends half the year working on movies. Yeah, Gon is like the laziest, most talented heavyweight of all time. It's wild. How do you feel about Marco Tulio as a prospect? Very fun. Very excited to see what he can do. Imavov should get a title shot. He beat Jared Allen and Izzy, though. Yeah, he should have gotten it over Chimaev if we were actually talking about merit. I'm not talking about Ochoa. What's his name? When was this? Was this card? How long ago was this? When was Cody Durden's last fight? What do you think of Marvin Vettori? You're not going to finish him, but you can definitely beat him. Atlanta. Did I just completely skip over it? Oh, here. Oh no, it is Ochoa. I'm losing it. Okay, it is Jose Ochoa. I'm not crazy. Okay. Okay, yeah. So my hottest take for this card, or rather the next card, I believe. This card. Well, that I think Ochoa can beat Almabayev. I don't know why. Oh yeah, I think I was mixing up Ochoa and Delgado. I thought I said the wrong one. I said the right one. Holloway can be a future lightweight champion. The problem is that I don't think that Holloway can beat Topuria. Because the biggest issue with Holloway trying to beat Topuria is that besides his cardio and his chin, his biggest attribute is his footwork. Now, Topuria's biggest attribute, in my opinion, is also his footwork. So let's even say that the footwork cancels out. Then the only advantages that Holloway has is his chin and his cardio. And it's hard to really impose a pace against someone who hits as hard as Topuria and someone who can also just take you down like Topuria. So now we're only left with the chin, and we saw that the chin is crackable. So I just don't see what adjustments Holloway can really make to win this. And I did think the first time they fought that Holloway had a good chance. But I think it's only getting harder because I think that I think that Topuria is getting better. I think that if they fought again, it would be significantly less competitive. I think that Topuria would probably take him out late round 1. Why do you think Allen definitely beats Vettori? I'm Italian and I hope Vettori wins. I don't think that Vettori has the speed or just pure grappling technical ability to keep up with Allen. Now, Allen doesn't have the best fight IQ, so he can always throw a fight, but his pure skills are just so far ahead of Vettori's right now that unless Vettori improved dramatically, he's going to have a lot of issues. I think Holloway could stylistically beat Islam. Yeah, I've said that before as well. Holloway definitely could beat Islam. I just don't think he can beat Ilya. Holloway is 3 more fights away from retirement. That's also possible, yeah. Max can beat Ilya if he can actually not lance and throw. It's mind-boggling how Max, after getting rocked, decided to lance and throw the blueprint for beating Ilya. So I think the reason why that happened, and I thought the same thing as you initially, is that Max has never really been rocked before. A lot of fighters, like when they're fighting in amateurs or in the regional scene, whatever, they get rocked and they're like, okay, after like 1 or 2 times, they're like, okay, this is the best way to recover, this is how I survive, and so on. Max got rocked, had no idea what to do. Is the fact that Allen has already beaten Vettori in the street fight relevant in the octagon? No, not really. There's a lot of other things at play when in a random street altercation. Max has historically never been rocked, so I genuinely... Yeah, exactly. I need to figure out how to get the latency down, because even though I have it on ultra low latency, I think, it's like at least 10 seconds, which I don't like. Stream settings. Yeah, I set it to ultra low latency, and I'm so far behind, like, or I guess chat is behind me, I guess would be the accurate description here. Okay, so it's been 2 hours, so I'm probably going to call it for tonight now. Thank you guys for all coming. Again, if you want to join the community with the bets, I do recommend it. We do extremely well there. The link is in the description of this stream, I believe. So you can just click on that to get started. You can also DM me on Instagram if you're having any problems there. So once again, thank you guys for coming. I'll definitely be working on hopefully improving the stream quality over time. And have a good night, everyone.